Hi everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the CEO of Homelessness New South Wales. I'm Catherine McKernan, and I'd like to thank you very much for once again giving up some time to hear about the high needs packages and understand the process, and hopefully ask lots of questions so you really understand the process and can put in really good applications. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge that we're all on various different Aboriginal lands, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge the Aboriginal people who are attending and presenting at this webinar today too. Just to let you all know that the webinar will be recorded and will be shared on the Homelessness New South Wales website. So in terms of the slides and notes and so on, you don't need to scribble things down. It will all be available. We're going to provide Q&A throughout the webinar, and hopefully you're familiar with this, but if not, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen where you can type in questions as we go. But what we will do is save the Q&A session to later on once all the panel members and the presentations have been held. But we've got a good block of time to hopefully really have some really good discussions and respond to the questions. We're also really pleased to have Rebecca O'Reilly from the Department of Community Justice joining us for the Q&A part as well. So if you have questions that are related to the DCJ part of Together Home, feel free to pop those in as well, and we'll work with Rebecca to help provide answers to that as well. Homelessness New South Wales is really pleased to be administering this part of the Together Home program. It's not a traditional role for us, and the board had to have big consideration and careful consideration around taking the role on. And we've structured it in a way that really separates this work from members and from the board as well. And the decisions are, I cannot emphasise enough, the decisions on the packages will lie with the panel. Homelessness New South Wales is providing secretariat and administrative support, but the decision making around the applications lies with the panel. So without further ado, I'd really like to welcome Tamara Sequeira, who's the Manager of Policy and Advocacy in Homelessness New South Wales, who's going to walk you through the process and provide an overview of the packages.
Hi everybody, and welcome to our webinar. Before I start, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm meeting on Darug country. I'd like to also pay my respects to the Warramalli and the Turrbal clans of that nation, which is out in Western Sydney. So what I'm going to present to you today is around the high needs packages, look at the eligibility to the program, when to consider a referral, using the VI SPDAT. We're going to go through the referral form, things to consider in the referral form, the budget template, look at some information around the panel, and also I'm going to give you some contacts as well. So we've been in throughout this process, we've been in consultation with panel members who've been really helpful and insightful in providing feedback, because their role has been to support the development of the processes and the implementation processes as well. I'd also like to thank Claire Gardner, who has taken on the role of project lead over the high needs packages, and her work to date on putting all together the forms and coordinating a lot of the behind the scenes. So thank you so much to everybody. So Homelessness New South Wales is supporting the Department of Communities and Justice in the delivery of the Together Home program through the administration of the high needs packages. Now, the high needs panel has been established in response to the Together Home program guidelines to support the allocation of funding for the high needs packages. The high needs packages are intended to provide highly vulnerable individuals with tailored support to aim to promote independent living skills, social inclusion, and provide access to other supports like clinical mental health support and drug and alcohol services. So you may be aware, or you may have heard, there will be 40 packages across New South Wales, and that'll be allocated for individuals aged 18 years and over who are being currently supported through the Together Home program. They've also have been assessed using the VI SPDAT screening triage tool and received a minimum score of 15 plus, and or the service has assessed as suitable for referral. And we'll go through a bit around the VI SPDAT and the the 15 plus a little later in the presentation. The priority access will be given to individuals who identify as Aboriginal or both Torres Strait Islander, individuals who identify as Aboriginal or both Torres Strait Islander who are over 45 years, individuals over 55, individuals under 24, females, and individuals who identify as LGBTQIA+. I'd also like to note that a third of the high needs packages will be allocated to the Aboriginal community. So some of the things to consider when making a referral. The high needs packages are intended for people with needs that are greater than what can be provided by the general Together Home program. Also, if it becomes evident that a current Together Home support package is not meeting the needs of an individual and additional support is required, or an individual has been accepted into a Together Home program and requires additional support whilst waiting for an NDIS or HACCP package. So I'd like to just go through this really brief snapshot of the referral process. The high needs package referral process has been aligned to the Together Home program guidelines. It's expected that referrals will come through the established Together Home program processes. So that means where services have already engaged or are supporting the individual. This can be either through the Client Assessment and Referral Group, known as the CRAG, or in some cases, a community housing provider. It's really important that before you consider a referral to the high needs panel, that you have discussed this with the individual and the services, what the needs of the individual have been identified, or the needs that have not been met in the current Together Home package. It's important to consult with the individual and include them in this entire process to identify the barriers and concerns they have and the needs that they identify, and also look at previous referrals to support services and the barriers to those. The referrer will also need to identify what services are currently in place or need to be put in place so that you can work out where the gaps of service support are. And this is going to inform the package that you will be asking the panel to consider. So as you can see, there's that collaborative planning, which is so important, involving everybody in understanding the needs of the individual and also including the individual. So just briefly, the referral to the high needs package includes the client engagement and nomination form that you're aware of, which was what was needed to nominate for the Together Home program, the high needs panel referral form, the high needs panel budget template, and any other supporting documentation. The referral form and the budget template are found on our website, of which I'll provide information a little later, and it's included in the one document. So you don't have to search for both, they're included in the one document. So looking at the VI SPDAT. The VI SPDAT is used internationally. It's based upon data sources and peer-reviewed research from around the world. And completing a VI SPDAT will allow you to understand the individual rather than relying on the assumptions about the acuteness of the individual's needs. A VI SPDAT score of 15 plus will indicate a person may need a high level of support to stay housed. And we're hearing some language around we think this person needs are. So it moves away from what you think to what vulnerability comes out through the VI SPDAT and also in consultation with the individual and the services. So you get a full picture. The VI SPDAT is a mandated tool. It's been selected for the following reasons. It's supported by an extensive body of evidence. It will help prioritise referrals for high needs support packages, and the information gleaned is easily understood. The high needs panel process has been specifically designed to operationalise the information that comes out of the tool. As you are aware, the VI SPDAT is a self-reporting pre-screening triage tool, and completing it will help you identify whether an additional support package is needed. We also understand the flexibility required, and it can be applied where a person has a small number of acute issues that seriously impact their housing stability. So rather than a large number of complex co-occurring issues, and the impact of these issues may result in a person requiring intensive support even though they may have a lower score. And you may know a person's history or have other information from other agencies or sources. If you believe the VI SPDAT does not provide a full and accurate picture, then you can attach other information to a referral, such as observations or documentations, with the consent of the individual. So the referral form. It's designed to capture additional information to the client engagement nomination form. It identifies if an individual belongs to a priority group. It identifies the individual's VI SPDAT score, and it provides space for agencies to describe an individual's needs and risks. And it provides space for agencies to put details of an individual's referral history. Looking at the budget template. So this requires agencies to develop a support plan for an individual, and based on the needs identified through the VI SPDAT. Engagement with the individual, and communication with other services. It provides space for agencies to outline the required package, example, the service type, the provider, and the cost. It encourages agencies to consider long-term planning, example, that transition to mainstream service provision. So it's important to, I guess, and that comes down to understanding the role of the panel. The panel is not there to put together the support plan or put together what your particular, the individual needs. That is for you to work out based on that gap that I was talking about, from where the general Together Home package is not meeting the needs. And also understanding, you might think as a provider, this person needs X, whereas coming back to what the individual needs, because we're working within a Housing First framework and the principles with Housing First, it needs to be led by the individual. It's understanding that you might identify this person needs high clinical support, whereas the individual may need something different. But again, it's with the consent of the individual and working with them to identify what are the priorities for them. So before I finish this presentation, I'm just going to briefly go through the referral form. Like I said, the referral form is found at the Homelessness New South Wales website, and I'll provide that information at the end, or you can Google High Needs Packages Homelessness New South Wales. The email address, highneedspackages@homelessnessnewsouthwales.org.au, is the point of contact for questions, and also where the referral form and documentation will be sent. So initially, it's putting your details down because you'll be the contact, and also providing a space where if there's somebody else who can provide additional information for them to put details as well. We're requesting, I guess, to tick a statement here that best describes to the individual in the previous month, and that's specifically targeting their engagement, because that too can be a barrier, can be an identified barrier that the panel may need to consider. The individual's needs are next, and you can see here we provide a space for the current VI SPDAT score and a previous VI SPDAT score. It was highlighted in the trainer session with Ian De Jong, that you don't necessarily need to find the other or previous VI SPDAT score unless the person's situation has changed. And the best way to do that is to ask the individual, since the last time, or have you done the VI SPDAT score survey, or and if they say yes, then you can actually ask them, has your situation changed since then? And that will ensure whether you need to do another VI score, a VI survey. So here is the priority group here. So again, it identifies the priorities. And like with the Together Home general package, having, it's set at the the 400 general packages, and within that the 40 high needs packages, it is about prioritising. So we know that the decision that the panel will make in prioritising who receives those packages will be a challenging one. But however, we're really looking at those that are missing out on or who have really fallen through those cracks in service delivery and who are constantly facing that cyclical long-term homelessness with that comorbidity, trimorbidity needs. So here we have the reason for the referral, looking at the length of time of cycling through homelessness, the VI score as well. And if the score is less than 15, but you're not able to identify those chronic at-risk health conditions, then we request that you discontinue the referral. Again, we understand that you may identify, if it is below 15, that there are those chronic issues. And that was highlighted in some of the Housing First programs, that you can score a lower number, but also there may be really complex needs underlying that too. But they really need to be identified. So we put here other reasons around mental well-being, physical health, substance use, and current risk to tenancy as some of the reasons for the referral that you can fill in. We've put here a section to identify summary of risks, and then also the referral history. And often it is that over the time, individuals have been referred to organisations or to programs, but for various reasons those referrals either have not been accepted, or there may be individual circumstances that have prevented that referral from being accepted. So it's important to document that, and that again comes back to having those conversations with the individual, having the conversations with that collaborative with other organisations to understand what are the referrals. Is there actually a current referral to NDIS or a previous referral? Mental health referrals, a HASI referral, and again acknowledging even HASI, it's for people, it's a voluntary program. So again, you might think it's a good idea, but unless that individual wants to be referred, that's really important to consider. Access to a GP or drug and alcohol service and other. So we've given you quite a bit of room there to sort of document that history. In terms of consent, that is, again, we will not accept any referrals without a consent. And we also will provide as part of the administrative support, a pre sort of screening of all the referrals. So it will be sent back to you if the consent is not complete. We've also acknowledged that a verbal consent may be, or an audio consent may be more appropriate, so that can be sent through as well. And so if we're looking at the budget template, which I mentioned, that is for organisations, for yourselves to, you are asking the panel to approve a budget, to approve a support plan. So again, it's not the panel deciding what that person needs, but you would have had to have thought around what are the needs, what is what are the services that need to be involved, how often do you want it, is this over for 6 months, 2 weeks, 1 year? Who is the service provider and what are the fees associated with that particular intervention or support package? So that's, and we give you additional room to write there about other package requirements, but also the panel also acknowledged the importance of looking at the transitioning to mainstream service provision. So this is, we acknowledge that this is a 2-year program, and we're as believing that the particularly with those that experience the quite complex long-term needs, that funding will continue to maintain tenancies, but it's really important that as the person enters the program, you're already thinking about that transitioning to mainstream long-term support. So the panel includes an independent representatives from DCJ, Health, NDIA, Aboriginal representatives, and a person with lived experience. All referrals are pre-screened pre the panel meeting and involves checking that all relevant information has been provided and individuals meet the criteria for a high needs package. The panel will meet monthly to review referrals, and the role of the panel is to ensure the prioritisation of packages for priority groups, ensure an equal distribution of packages across the state, provide a check and balance of identified needs and the outlined cost of supporting those needs, provide recommendations to the referral agency where a referral is not successful. So I want to assure you that, you know, there will be consideration for those, because again, it's not, we can't, you know, obviously look at accepting every referral. There is going to be a prioritisation, but, you know, we are, the panel is acknowledging the importance of putting in some recommendations to support you if the referral is not successful. And also the role of the panel is to approve the release of the funding for successful referrals. So after the panel meeting, the panel will communicate the decision with the community housing provider, notify DCJ of the decision. DCJ will also issue a letter of variation to the CHP. Additional funds will be released to the CHP by Homelessness New South Wales, and the process will be progressively reviewed. So I think that's important to acknowledge, as this is, you know, the first time we're doing this and we're learning as we go. The panel process may result in systemic barriers also being identified that prevent support being provided to an individual. And Homelessness New South Wales will seek to advocate to address those barriers. And guidelines are being developed that will detail the high needs package process. So here are some contact and dates, the website there. Round one is now open and it closes on the 18th of September. The first panel meeting will be held on the 1st of October. If you have any questions, please put them in an email and send to highneedspackages@homelessnessnewsouthwales.org.au, and also all the referrals will be sent to that same email address.
Thank you very much, Tamara, for what was, I hope, a very clear presentation, providing a really good overview of the process. I just want to encourage everyone, the Q&A box, we've had one question so far, and I'm sure you've got lots of things that you would like us to discuss, and we've got plenty of time for discussion, so I would encourage everyone to, you know, use the Q&A box and type in any question. No question is a silly question. We've had the panel and the Homelessness New South Wales staff and with DCJ have had many discussions trying to work through all of this, and as Tamara said, we are learning as we go, and so we would really be, you know, we're grateful to hear suggestions and questions from everyone, so feel free to put questions in. The other thing I just wanted to emphasize too, because I imagine one of the questions might be is, why did we come up with 15 as the score? And I just wanted to reassure everyone that Tamara Sakari is actually a very fortunate person in that she is part of the Europe Hub Housing First Train the Trainer process, and so in developing this process we've consulted with a number of other organisations across Australia who are delivering a housing first approach, and also internationally as well, and what they've advised us is that 15 plus is really what you should be looking at in terms of high needs, and but as Tamara's really clearly emphasised, if someone doesn't reach the 15 and you do feel there are other issues that need to be considered, by all means submit an application. It's now we're now going to move to give you an opportunity to understand who is on the panel and how we've selected, you know, and understand why they're on the panel as well. We're really pleased to have such a range of experts who are joining us, and they have been really actively working through on the process, and also understanding, you know, and as we were also running through some case scenarios, so we made sure we had the process right, and really providing excellent input into this process. So I'd like to thank them already for all the work that they have done on this. In terms of establishing the panel, the expertise is wide-ranging. So we have experts from health, experts from the NDIA, experts from DCJ, but also some service providers and people with lived experience, and of course Aboriginal community expertise as well. So we're really, really lucky to have all of those people. So now I'm just going to introduce them all and then give them an opportunity to just talk about what they might be looking for in terms of the packages, and also what their experience is a little bit as well. So as I mentioned, we're really fortunate to have Kayleen Adams. Kayleen is from Platform Youth Services and is the Assertive Outreach Coordinator. Platform is based in the Penrith Nepean area, and she's also one of our Aboriginal representatives on the panel. We also have Claudia Vianello, who is from the Department of Community Justice, and she's the Director Commissioning and Planning from Western Sydney and Nepean Blue Mountains districts. We have Stephanie McFarlane, who is from the South East Sydney Local Health District, and she's the Health Program Manager of Priority Populations. We also have Rhiannon Brody, who is the Acting Assistant Director at the NDIA. And Mark Morrill, who is a lived experience expert, but he also works with NEMI. And finally, we have Paula Coghill, who's from CHIA New South Wales, who's the Aboriginal Specialist Practitioner. So welcome to you all. I just looking at who's on video, and who would like to go first? I might choose Claudia. Are you okay to go first in terms of providing a little bit of an overview? Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Catherine. So, so Claudia Vianello. Yes, I'm currently Director Commissioning and Planning in Western Sydney and Nepean Blue Mountains. I guess my experience and expertise, I don't know. It's hard to call yourself an expert in anything really, but I guess I've worked in as a social worker and case manager for many years prior to entering the sector development side of the world. Close to 28 years of working in disability services, both operational frontline roles and behind the scenes establishment, implementation of disability services, and I guess having a pretty good cross view now over the last 8 years of having worked in the sector development side of things, of how organisations structure service delivery and how that is offered. So I guess I'll bring those kind of things to the forefront in terms of looking at the documentation that comes through for each of the individuals.
Thank you so much, Claudia. I might now ask Mark to just provide a quick overview of his expertise and role in the panel.
Hi, my name is Mark Morrell. I'm a peer advisor or peer support worker at NEMI National. I work for Way to Home, which is the outreach side of it, and I also work with NEMI STEP, which is more post-crisis. I've been here for about 3 years, and my lived experience is I was homeless for about that amount of time as well. And I think I just bring that lived experience and being able to relate to people that are on the street. And I found in my time that sort of being a person of lived experience, it does break down a lot of barriers that are normally there for people that don't have the lived experience of homelessness. So as this is my first meeting, I'm just going to listen in today and take in as much as I can. So thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Mark. Kayleen, do you want to go next?
Yes, so I'm Kayleen. I'm an Aboriginal woman from the Dharawal Nation. I've been working in the community services sector in identified and non-identified roles for 20 years. I've worked across the areas of child protection, domestic violence, and homelessness throughout this period in the last 10 years, where I've also worked primarily within the assertive outreach field for the last 10 years, supporting and assisting rough sleepers. I have extensive experience in working with clients with high and complex needs, and I'm really hopeful that the Together Home program will assist and support rough sleepers to sustain their tenancy past the project end date with the support of the high need packages should individuals require this.
Great, thank you so much, Kayleen, that's great. Paula, we might hand over to you. Paula's video unfortunately isn't working, but we can hear her loud and clear, so off you go, Paula.
Morning, everyone. Yes, my name's Paula Coghill. I'm a very proud descendant of the Western Bundjalung group in the Federation of Nations of the Bundjalung area, Northern Rivers area. It's probably the most beautiful part of Australia. We have both freshwater and saltwater, and I come from both sides. I guess my background has been working in the Aboriginal sector generally in roles very similar to Kayleen, from child protection right through to community development, but certainly passionate about homelessness issues, and particularly for us as Aboriginal people. We've been homeless in this country for the last 139 years. And I guess my real introduction was the CEO for the Land Council, for our local Land Council for 5 years, in which we took on a JWA with Momentum Collective to have an SHS service based at our Land Council, and it certainly was a great partnership, and it still continues today. And yeah, enjoyed every bit of being part of that and involved in that. And I now work for CHEER New South Wales as the Aboriginal Specialist, and I've held that position for the last 2.5 years. And so it's great to be on both sides, both housing and homelessness. And yeah, I look forward to seeing what the assessments are like, and being part of that decision making in hopefully improving the lives of both Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, as well as the other community groups that we have. So yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. And Stephanie McFarlane from Health.
Hi, so my name's Stephanie. I am the Homelessness Health Program Manager for South Eastern Sydney Local Health District. The role that I'm currently in is primarily strategic, but I am a social worker by trade. I suppose I bring experience in a variety of areas. I have worked in Housing First programs before entering health, so sort of the non-government side. And then in health, I've worked in clinical drug and alcohol services, providing assertive outreach to complex clients with complex drug and alcohol issues, and now sort of within a policy and planning sort of role. So I suppose I have the intersection of experience between health, housing, and homelessness, and hope to bring a clinical understanding and my clinical knowledge to this collective panel, which I'm really looking forward to being part of.
We are really speeding along, so that is fantastic. So we have lots of time for questions. So I might just see if we can get everyone's videos back on, just so that we can throw to questions relatively easily. And we've got Rebecca O'Reilly joining us from Department of Communities and Justice as well, to answer any of the DCJ type questions that we may get as well. And I might actually, Rebecca, throw to you for the first question we've gotten on the chat, which is around VI SPDAT training for new staff. So I know that you are organising VI SPDAT training, so I'll let you answer.
Yes, we've organised 2 sessions of VI SPDAT training. We do have a recording of the first training session if people would like to get access to that. But if there is a larger group of people that are interested in having some more direct contact with OrgCode, they're the people that developed the VI SPDAT, we'll be more than happy to run some additional sessions. So I guess that's based on the number and level of interest across the CHPs who would like to participate. So if you're interested, why don't you send the Together Home mailbox an email, and we'll let you know. If there's only a couple of people that are interested, we'll send you the link so you can have a look. And I can assure you, watching the link, once you have finished watching that, you will be feeling more than capable of undertaking a VI SPDAT paper-based form.
So I'm just going to go through some of the other questions, and there was a question from Kevin Randall, and I think this is one for Tamara, and I can also answer it, but I'll give it to Tamara. And the question is, if there are 40 packages, but the role of the panel is to approve a budget, does that mean there could be some small budgets approved, and that would increase the number of packages?
Yeah, so we acknowledge that it's like a pool, like I guess a pool, and if say one person in the referral doesn't use up the entire amount allocated, that will go back into, I guess, the pool where it can be used for other packages.
Yeah, so that's right. So whilst it is nominally 40 packages, we have set up a process, as Tamara says, so that it may be more depending on the budget submitted, but also there may be circumstances where people receiving the package over the 2-year period may actually get onto the NDIS, for example, or through other circumstances may not need the package anymore. And so therefore we are able to reallocate that as well. So we're trying to create a process that's as rolling and flexible and maximizes the funding as much as possible to really provide as many people as possible with the support that they need. The next question I think is one for, I might give it to a panel member, but Tamara, you can also help. And that's a question around it's from Karen Hunter. I should have named I did actually name everyone else before, so that's good. So Karen Hunter, and she's asking around whether if people require neuropsychological assessments or occupational therapy or other kinds of assessments which might provide evidence for an NDIS or DSP application, could the high needs package be utilised for this? So Tamara and Rhiannon, if you're available, it would be great if you could share answering that.
So I think it comes back to the general Together Home package and understanding if you know you've used up the funding allocated to that, and you've acknowledged that yes, so we need to refer somebody to the high needs packages and use that additional funding. So it would be putting together that information in the referral and putting that to the panel to approve funding for those assessments. And I'm not again, I've got to be aware I'm not speaking on behalf of the panel. That would have to be decided by the panel. So I do encourage you to be very clear with the referral and what you're asking for. But yes, so that again looks at, it doesn't have to be the entire scope. It can just be a small portion allocated to, I guess, like you're saying, assessments.
And Rhiannon has joined us, so I
sorry about that.
That's great. I'll throw over to you so you can just do a bit of an intro of yourself and also perhaps provide some more input around that question.
Yeah, hi, I'm Rhiannon Brody. I'm part of the community and engagement team here at the NDIS, and it's really great to be part of the panel. I think particularly in the area of interest for us is around how we can engage better with really hard to reach cohorts, including people who are experiencing homelessness, and ensure that they're able to get onto the NDIS. I know a lot of people have had challenges in engaging and navigating the process. So hopefully they'll, as a result of me being part of the panel, start to understand some of these complexities, but also help to provide that education and awareness to people around how they can access supports under the NDIS. And I think that's going to be crucial in terms of long-term sustainability of people being able to live in a home of their own, of their choice, and where that is, having the right supports to be able to enable that to happen. Do you mind, Catherine, because I just jumped on and missed that question, what that question was, if that's
Sorry,
okay?
yeah, so it was around using the high needs packages to undertake some of the assessments required as evidence for an NDIS or DSP application, like whether or not the packages could be utilised for that. So that was but you answered that, I think, relatively well, but you can add some more if you want to.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be really, great, especially I know with interacting with a lot of people that are probably listening today, like specialist homelessness services or people working in this area. Often it's like, what sort of information do I need to be able to inform the NDIS in terms of getting onto the scheme? And I think that the evidence that we're looking for these high needs packages is going to support a lot of that. And, you know, with working, being able to provide feedback back into the agency where perhaps things might not have worked, or there might be individual cases where it hasn't been a good outcome for someone, and looking at to why that's the reason. And we don't want that to be the barriers in terms of making it too complex either. So hopefully we can improve that overall for everyone.
I'm also going to throw to Claudia, who would also like to add something from her perspective. And then Stephanie, I'm going to ask you to talk a bit about the exit planning element of the process as well. So Claudia, do you want to go? And then I'll throw to you, Stephanie.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think that what would support the application for a high needs package to use it to get the assessments required to meet eligibility for NDIS or the DSP. I think it's about also looking at, you know, where you've actually tried to get those assessments through mainstream supports already or through connections with local health districts, which are happening through the CRAGs at the moment. So yeah, just showing the evidence of why it's being paid for through the high needs package because it couldn't be obtained through mainstream supports or quickly enough, I guess, is the kind of information that would be useful to have in the referrals.
Great. And yeah, so we had a Dorothy Dixer question already lined up for Stephanie around exit planning, and this question actually really links to that. So Stephanie, I'm just going to say, in the panel discussions in terms of setting up the process, we were really clear about the importance of doing exit planning at the beginning of this process. Do you want to just explain a little bit as to why that's really helpful and useful and how that might link to this question?
Sure. So I think exit planning is critical, particularly when you're talking about a program that only has a medium term, I suppose, lifespan. We're talking about 2 years of really high quality intensive support, but for a vulnerable population that are probably going to require ongoing support in different ways for a longer period of time. So I suppose if we think about the question around assessments for NDIS or for other ongoing supports, it's really critical to think about that in a referral and how that might result in a longer term support plan. So we need to think from the beginning, what is this person going to need or benefit from after I've stopped working with them or after we've stopped working with them, so that they're able to continue to sustain not just a tenancy, but a quality of life well into the future. And that's something from a health perspective, we really encourage with our health clinicians to really start thinking from the very beginning, what happens after I've been involved with this person. And so that's a critical part of developing support plans, I think, for this program.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. I'm now going to go to a few more questions, and please keep them coming because they're really great. So we've got a question from Petra Jenkins, and I think this might be one for you, Rebecca, and perhaps the panel after that. And that's a question around the level of conversation and involvement, engagement with corrections around the Together Home program, considering that, you know, one of the TAPs or one of the causes of rough sleeping is people leaving prison, and she was particularly asking around women leaving prison who end up rough sleeping. So Rebecca?
That's an interesting question. The program in its design has been put in place to pick up people who were assisted with temporary accommodation as a result of the pandemic. So at the start of COVID-19, there was $14 million allocated, and people were coming who were actually street sleeping at that point in time, put into temporary accommodation. And this program is targeting those people. And it's not to say that some of those people perhaps have recent interactions with corrections. And through our data collection, we're trying to understand how many people that is. But the design of this program isn't to get people at the point of leaving corrections. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, I think it does provide it. Yeah, provides an answer. And I think if you've got more questions around that, Petra, can you pop them into the Q&A, and we will endeavour to follow up on that too. So then we've got a question. I think, Rebecca, this is really for you alongside us, which is around what is the funding allocated to the high needs packages. And I would just really encourage everyone to go to our website and look at the fact sheet that is provided alongside the application processes, which does provide information around the funding allocation. But Rebecca, do you want to answer that one?
It's up to approximately, I think it's about $39,000. And it's not to say that every single person will be accessing that $39,000. And that's because you're being asked to put in a budget to demonstrate the degree of need or the intensity of support that the person is going to be receiving. But that's what we have available within our budget.
Great, thank you. And that was a question from Lisa Fowler. Apologies for not providing the name. I would encourage everyone to keep popping them onto the Q&A. Lisa has another question, and this is again around the NDIS. So Rhiannon, might be one for you alongside others who may have expertise as well. And that's just a question around the capacity for NDIS workers to do outreach to assess clients whilst they're homeless.
Yep. If it's In determining, you know, if it's before trying to get onto the scheme, currently at the moment, there is no outreach assessment. We're relying on people in the community, people that work at, you know, allied health professionals or people know them best to gather that evidence and provide that input into what sort of supports that they need because of their impact of their disability or their impairment. So that's how it works. There are changes on the horizon. From next year, there is the ability to have an independent assessment, which will not be undertaken by the NDIS, but an external organisation. And I'm happy as part of today's resources or feedback to provide some information about that because it's a new announcement. But that will have the potentially to be able to have a functional assessment that's determined based on where someone's at the moment. And that depends on where they're living, and if they are experiencing homelessness, that would be done in that environment, so that we can gather, you know, a real picture of what the support needs are. So currently at the moment, there is no outreach in terms of doing those assessments. When someone does come onto the scheme and becomes a participant, no, absolutely, that we need to be ensuring that any supports that are provided and any assessments that we're, you know, needing along the way to determine, okay, this person, you know, is currently living here. What would it take to be able to live independently? We need to get that full assessment done, and we need to do it not in real time, in real places, not something that's done just in perhaps a hospital environment, or because that really doesn't reflect the true needs of that person. And any assessment needs to look at their individual circumstance. So what sort of supports do they have now? What informal supports they have, if they have any, and if they don't, that needs to be identified as well.
Great, and that actually segues to another Dorothy Dixer that we had both for you and Stephanie, which is around if you're making an application into the high needs packages and you think that a client is eligible for NDIS or for HACI, what should your approach be?
So in terms of you're wanting to also apply for the NDIS as well, I think, you know, that's something that I'm happy as part of the panel also to be able to provide feedback. If you know, has someone been able to test their eligibility, and what would we need to do with that? And obviously part of that process would be looking at what evidence have we got here, because we might have sufficient evidence to be able to support someone to be able to access that scheme. I think as part of this too, understanding and what sort of evidence that we're looking for from the scheme, and happy to provide that information for people, so that perhaps when thinking about applying for this sort of package, that it could be at the same time you're actually gathering the same information that you'd need to be able to support an NDIS access decision as well. And that would be around, you know, and I've got some great tools that we could share with you all around what sort of information that we'd be requiring around that impact of the disability or the impairment.
Great, thanks Rhiannon. And Stephanie?
I think in terms of HACI, it sort of depends on where the referral or where the person is currently living and residing. So as many of you will know, HACI packages are contracted out to a variety of non-government organisations, and they're usually they're geographical based. So some regions it's New Horizons, some regions it's Mission Australia, and rural and regionally it might be other organisations. So if you thought that someone was eligible for HACI, we could work towards working with the local non-government organisation, but also the clinical mental health team that are sort of within the geographic area in which the person is currently residing, because I believe this is still the case. There was some conversation at some point of sort of changing some of this, but a person does need a clinical mental health case manager before being eligible for a HACI program. So that would either need to be a referral made or would need to be set up before making a HACI referral.
Great, thank you very much, Steph. We've gotten a question from Kevin Randall, which is actually one I think I'll answer, but Tamara, you can come in with me if you would like. And the question is around, will the number of available packages be visible to the sector on a monthly basis following a panel meeting? And the answer is absolutely yes. As I think Tamara mentioned in her presentation, this will be a rolling process. Yes, we are limited to 40 packages, but where the panel will meet as we need to enable the assessments to be done as timely as possible. And yes, absolutely, for you to do the next round of applications, you absolutely need to know how many packages and how much funding is still available. So absolutely, we will provide that to you. I don't know if you've got anything to add, Tamara, to that.
No, and I guess we'll also be tracking across districts and also from the referrals who has identified as being Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander as well.
Yeah. And on that issue, I might throw to Kayleen and Paula, just in terms of working with Aboriginal people to do a high needs package. Do you have any suggestions or tips around how support providers and CHP should be working with Aboriginal communities and Aboriginal people, Aboriginal clients for the high needs packages?
I guess I would like to, first off, I'd like to see CHPs work towards establishing ongoing partnerships with Aboriginal services. I think that's very important. I think that, you know, Aboriginal communities respond well with Aboriginal services, but that choice should also be given for that to occur. Some don't, because, you know, mob don't like to talk to mob sometimes. Yeah, but I would suggest you look at hiring Aboriginal staff on the ground for it, and having them complete the assessments. Be very mindful of the cultural implications in and amongst that. Create a culturally safe environment. Men like to discuss some men's business with men and women with women, and I think that's very important that we put those into factors, put those things in place to protect those as well.
Yeah, look, I just want to certainly reiterate what Carlene's saying. I think it's really important that, particularly in terms of, I think building that relationship is really important, and having, you know, an Aboriginal worker with you, if not, you know, them doing it with the clients as well. And of course, yeah, giving them the option that, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be an Aboriginal person because of like Carleen said, this mob. Excuse me. The only other thing that's I think is really important is to ask if they're on country or off country, because that just adds to where they're at in terms of their you know, what their situation heightens their situation. Excuse me. And I think, yeah, the ensuring that CHPs have a really good relationship with really relevant and important community organisations within their area, and yeah, and making sure that they have Aboriginal people working with Aboriginal people on the ground, and you know, ensuring that they have their staff numbers and you know, that are particularly Aboriginal. Yeah, so I think that's about it, Catherine.
Great, thank you so much, Paula. Tamara, do you want to just briefly talk about what's happening in the inner city around that process, perhaps?
Sure thing. So following, I guess, the response to COVID and you know, working with Aboriginal services and Aboriginal workforce in the inner city to support people, Aboriginal community who've been in hotels, and also who had left hotels, and also who never, who were remained sleeping rough. The importance of putting together I guess a coordinated, or you know, a group to, number one, support the Aboriginal staff to coordinate the response to Aboriginal community, and to, I guess, and also to escalate any kind of systemic barriers or issues that were coming up in, particularly for Aboriginal mob to access support. So we've been meeting weekly since March, April, and what is currently happening in terms of the referrals going into the Together Home is that they come through I guess, the group first, any Aboriginal identified individuals, and their referral, I guess, comes through the group first and it's not the working group, it's a case coordination group. Sorry, I should have, there's a working group, and then there's also a case coordination group specifically set up to work with Aboriginal community. So that particular group will initially assess those referrals, and that gives, I guess, collectively the workers understanding of, you know, who's possibly new to the area as well, who's maybe come in from outside Sydney, and also who has also got established relationships. So who's the best worker or best organisation to work with that particular person. So it's provided, and then that I guess feedback or recommendation then goes to the CRAG or gets given back to the referrer. So I guess it's really using the experience and the knowledge, the cultural knowledge that the Aboriginal workforce have, and which is really crucial. So that is, I guess, an example, and that we're hoping to sort of roll something similar, or to encourage other districts to do similar coordination groups, particularly for the referrals for the Together Home.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, Tamara. Mark, if it's okay, I might ask you a question, and that's just around consent and getting consent from clients. Do you have any tips or suggestions around how consent can be done in a way that is easily understandable and people understand the process?
I think it's just a matter of explaining what the consent is and how it works on that person's level of knowledge or, you know, expertise, which most people sleeping rough don't have. And to me, it's just taking the time to do it rather than trying to rush things through because you have a deadline, or, you know, it might take 2 or 3 engagements just to get consent done, as it does on a normal day with me. And just what we've been discussing about having Aboriginal staff, that'd really help too. I mean, you know, it's just breaking down that initial barrier, sort of finding a way to do that. And as I said, it seems to work with someone who has lived experience, and it seems to work with someone, you know, that is an Indigenous person working with other Indigenous people. So I don't know, just time and patience.
Yeah, no, time and patience. That's a great answer. Thank you very much. Thanks so much to Lisa, who's popping these questions in. I really would encourage the other participants to pop questions in as well. Lisa's got just a question again about the NDIS, Rhiannon, and I think this might go to you. And it's just around the length of time it might take in terms of the assessment and referral process for NDIS. I better read it more closely. Sorry. How long would you suggest it would be to move the NDIS assessment referral process taking in assessing a client experiencing homelessness to really ascertain whether or not you should do the Together Home high needs packages, I think, and then how long it might take for that person to get onto the NDIS? I hope that's right, Lisa. If I've misunderstood, please retype the question. So
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Look, I think out of this, I think me being part of it might be able to, I'm guessing, and this is, please, Catherine, correct me if I'm wrong, people applying, if it's looking like that they could get onto the NDIS, it'd be me providing some support around. I'm happy to help people navigate that system. So I don't think it's one or the other, or it might be in terms of doing it at the same time. So, and I think there's probably some unknowns here, and I know that there are a lot of gaps, particularly for people experiencing homelessness, in getting onto the scheme. So I'm hoping that with our involvement, the NDIS, and working perhaps even with our NDIS access team to see how we can help facilitate or fast track something as well. I know I spoke to the National Access Branch couple of weeks ago to let them know, and they'd worked quite closely too when COVID happened and trying to support people through that process. Had they engaged with us before? What were the barriers? Why weren't they engaging? What sort of evidence do we need? So I'm hoping that as being part of this will help with that. So it really isn't any time delays around anything. It's more about people knowing what they need to be able to gather and be able to assist that person to get onto the scheme, particularly if we've got them engaged. And I think that goes back to consent. A lot of the times we haven't engaged well with people. We haven't really explained to them what these supports could mean and what impact it could have on their life, so that we can be able to start to get that consent. And if we need to do, there's additional resources out there now to assist with that engagement process. So it might be me being part of the panel to be able to assist you to provide those extra resources for you, particularly if it's around getting someone onto the scheme and you as an organisation need that support at a local level to make that happen.
Great, thank you so much, Rhiannon. That was a great answer. I've got a few other Dorothy Dixer questions, and so this one I think will go to you, Tamara, but others can chime in. If my referral to the high needs package is unsuccessful, what do I do?
Yeah, okay. So the panel will also be providing recommendations, because we understand that it is, it's based on priority as well, and that there will be applications that will be unsuccessful. So yeah, the panel will work to put in some sort of steps or recommendations, and it's also understanding why the package was unsuccessful. So it could be it could be how the application was put in, it could be that there could be a variety of reasons too, and there could be like systemic barriers as well, similar to what Rhiannon was saying. It could be the fact that there aren't enough HACCP packages, or a huge array of reasons. But we are looking to provide some recommendations back to each organisation or each referrer.
Great. Thank you, Tamara. Now, Lucy we've got quite a complicated and fair enough question from Lucy Andrews. So I'm just going to put that out there, and I might attempt to answer it actually to start with, but others can feel free to join in. And Lucy's comment is that there's been pressure to really quickly house people, and it's not allowing time for the appropriate responses which have been discussed today. Her question is, how do we best move forward given we have this time pressure, but we're being educated in the sessions that we need patience and time to effectively engage clients into the program? So that is a great question, Lucy, and I'm really glad you asked it, because it's one we've been grappling with as well. And I guess my response, and then feel free to join in everyone else, my response is yes, we're completely aware of the time pressures being placed on community housing providers and support providers to refer and start working with clients. We have set up the high needs package process as a rolling process because we understand that it will take time potentially for you to understand the needs of your client and understand what their high support needs might be. So we have grappled with this amongst the panel and in discussions with DCJ around how to stage things, and that's exactly why we have a rolling process for assessment. So we understand that it may take you time to work with your client and to understand what those high support needs might be, and to gain the consent that you need, and also to look at the range of options that you might want to provide with the client in terms of the high needs package as well. So that's why we have a due date of the 18th of September in the first instance, but we are going to have monthly meetings and rolling meetings to enable people to do the work that's required to provide the support from the high needs end. So we understand that, yes, in terms of providing the general support packages, this may not be how it has happened. It would be great if we all had the time to do that, but what we're trying to do is encourage you to use this process for the high needs response, and to really make sure that you're providing the additional supports that people need. So I hope that answers it. I don't know, Rebecca, if you have anything to add to that as well.
No, not really. I think you covered it, but you're not wrong that there's this contradiction in terms of rapid rehousing and, trauma-informed service delivery and client-centeredness. We absolutely acknowledge that, but we think that everyone is doing an amazing job in terms of delivering the support so far.
Yeah, and I would just really encourage you. I know that Claire's not on the video today, but she is the key referral point in Homelessness New South Wales around this process. And so if you're working with someone and you haven't gotten all the information together, but you know that you will eventually be making an application, please contact us, contact Claire and have a conversation with her about when to put the application in, and really just understand the process. So I really would encourage you to engage with Claire as much as possible. That's what she's here for, to really support you in this process. So yeah. Oh yes, this is a good question. because of the processes, it is a little bit less clear. You know, the processes are kind of rolling. The question is, what happens when the high needs packages are exhausted and you may identify a client that has high needs? What will happen?
Well, I'll just dig into my back pocket. Yeah, so good question. And I think that's where advocacy comes into play. And that is where we really need to understand the breadth and depth of need and what is being, you know, what you're seeing and hearing from individuals who are housed and what's coming up, because, you know, this whole program Together Home is targeting those with comorbidity and trimorbidity. Being housing first, that in itself says that it is targeting, it's designed for those with a high level need who will require long-term support, not, you know, and I know, so that said, we are acknowledging, yes, you know, we may run out of funds, and that's that. Yeah, so that comes back to advocacy, and it's coming back to understanding. So even if you see that the that's, you know, how I'd see it. If you're looking at the, you know, the figure dollar going down, and you're kind of, do we put in a referral or don't? Let us know, because the more information we have, we can then go back to DCJ and go, look, we are getting a bulk more referrals. These are the risk to tenancies. It's not going to look good if, you know, if support isn't and also it gives us where we can push even harder for those systemic barriers to be shifted.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Great, thanks, Tamara. Yes, absolutely. One of the risks that we flagged very early on in working with DCJ on this is, you know, yeah, the limited number of high needs packages and the risk there may be for applicants who are not successful. And absolutely, Tamara nailed it in terms of the answers. And I know we are all really keen to make the program work and be as effective as possible, and really then promote and push for additional funding to be provided more broadly, because we know that 400 packages is not going to meet the entire need. So we really need to make this work really, really well and demonstrate the outcomes so that we can have it embedded as a permanent thing and have funding expanded to it as well. We've got another question in the Q&A, which is great. Thank you so much. It's from, and apologies if I mispronounce your name, it's from Geeta Chima. And she's asked, given that there are 40 high needs packages available and around 400 packages, does it make sense to reserve or allocate packages by district, for example, 10% per district? So Rebecca, I might just give that to you if that's all right, and then I can help you if you need.
I probably will need your help with this one in terms of the distribution of packages. I think what we know has been mentioned before, that we're aiming to prioritise certain groups of people in terms of getting access to the packages. And we don't know where that level of demand or intense need is going to be. We know what currently the distribution of, I guess you could call a standard package is across the state. So I think what we need to do is the way that the packages are being distributed in terms of that rolling fashion. I think we need to start seeing what is actually coming in and where that need sits, because it's very difficult to say, let's do a particular split, because this is about the need of a particular client. Yeah, what would you say to that, Catherine?
Yeah, that's exactly what I would have said, Rebecca. I think absolutely the panel is going to track the districts and be made aware of the equity of allocations to make sure that it isn't, for example, all in one district. So yes, absolutely, we'll be tracking that. But as Rebecca said, it really is about the needs of the clients. And so we really want to make sure that we are doing a prioritisation that is based on the support needs of clients. And so we didn't allocate per district for that reason. It was more about, yeah, understanding and making sure of the need, and then, but we will track it to make sure that it doesn't go to completely one district, for example, or a few. So yeah, that's the answer. All right, this is the last chance for everyone to pop a question in. If you can type fast, and I will keep talking for a little bit just in case they pop up, but otherwise we might end 15 minutes early. I'd just like to thank all the panel members and Rebecca for their time today. It's really been great to see the collaborative way in which we've all worked, and again in quite tight time frames to get all of this happening. So I'm really, I can't thank you all enough for the work that you've done in helping us get to this point. I'd really like to thank Tamara, Charlotte and Claire for all the work that they've done on the webinar, and also to Claire and Tamara in terms of putting all the process information together. I would really encourage you to visit our website and have a look at the fact sheet and all the documentation, and please just get in contact with Claire or Claire. We are here to help, we are here to assist, and we really look forward to receiving the applications really soon and convening the panel on the 1st of October so we can start making sure that we've got supports in place for those tenants so that we can really provide really great outcomes for them. So thank you everyone for coming today, really appreciate it. I should emphasize too, we will send an email out to all attendees with the recording and with the presentation and with the link to our website, so you'll get all the information via email as well. So thank you all so much. Thank you.